The latest news and talk, hot, fresh, and delivered when you want it. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
On to other matters and something completely different, really. So the former President Jacob Zuma's recent announcement pledging Umkhonto weSizwe Party's support for Morocco's control over Western Sahara has drawn sharp criticism from the ANC in particular and international relations experts in general. Now, the announcement made during a high-profile visit to Rabat recently has been described by critics as having the potential to undermine the country's long-standing foreign policy position and may open the door to risky shifts in the country's diplomatic positioning. Mr. Zuma visited the Moroccan capital, Rabat, on the 16th of July. During talks with our foreign minister, Nasser Bourita, Mr. Zuma voiced strong backing for Morocco's autonomy plan in Western Sahara. He described it as a practical path to ensure stability while upholding what he called the historical and legal basis for Morocco's claim to the area. All right. To help me make sense of all of this, I'm joined on the via Teams this evening by Deputy Minister in the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Botes. Good evening to you, sir, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, good evening to you, Thabiso.
Thank you very much for your time. There you are. I can see you now. Okay, let's also welcome academic researcher, political analyst with Al Jazeera English, that is the English version of Al Jazeera, Thabiso Fakute. Good evening to you, sir, and thank you as well for making time for us. Thabiso Fakute, are you muted? Okay. We cannot, I'm not sure what's going on with Thabiso Fakute. Liv, if you could just check in with him. But let me take this opportunity then, Deputy Minister, to start with you in terms of why the former president's statements and positions that he's articulated are so problematic, considering that he was speaking or in his capacity as the leader of a political party rather than speaking for the government of South Africa.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Thabiso, and let me appreciate the opportunity at Power FM to engage on this matter. I think, firstly, it's important to understand the South African foreign policy as it relates to Western Sahara, and how that foreign policy interface with the claim of the Kingdom of Morocco, that is really a antithesis to Pan-Africanism. So I think that obviously is an important issue. You would recall that the statements attributed to the MKP leader, Zuma, it's obviously really an antithesis to what the ANC what the AU's Constitutive Act speaks about, and what the UN Charter are speaking about is in fact the issues about the centrality of the fact that Western Sahara has been on the UN list of non-self-governing territories since 1963, which means that no state could claim particular ownership of that territories of Western Sahara. Secondly, the important issue is that when political parties seek to engage on their party political perspective, they should do that having a clear identity and a clear personality. Jacob Zuma do not present the South African people. That privilege are only earned through the ballot box. They are not part of any government of national unity. They are not a party within the GNU, either at the national level or in provincial level in KwaZulu-Natal. So if he was so confident in the fact that he would ordinarily assume that he is duty-bound to present a particular political perspective, it should then be that of his political party and not of the South African people. That privilege has long forgone him. Remember, Mr. Zuma is no more the head of state of South Africa. So he went there on a capacity to present the narrow interests of, what I really call an ethno-nationalist party that really is, its values is not reconcilable with that of the South African people. It speaks about non-racialism, non-sexism, democratic and prosperous South Africa. So he misrepresented the South African people, the South African constitution. He misrepresented actually Pan-Africanism by actually, engaging in clearly what I would call could only be checkbook diplomacy.
Okay, that's very strong words there. But again, I just come back to the point that let me use an example of a party that is a part of the government of national unity. The Democratic Alliance holds different views on relations or how the question of the Palestinians should be resolved and what a country's posture towards Israel should be. They hold a very different view, and yet they are still part of this government of national unity. They've articulated their policy positions on Israel and the Palestinian situation, the plight of the Palestinian people. But they do that when, in a way, or at least when they do so, there's never any confusion about who they are speaking for, that they're not articulating a government position. So, and they are actually a part of a government of national unity, unlike, the MK party, which is the official opposition. And I think that it seems to me that I also don't think there's any ambiguity there about whose interests or who they speak for.
Yeah, look, I think, and this is an important issue, that when Mr. Jacob Zuma goes to Morocco and engage in a bargaining campaign to subordinate the genuine interests and rights of the people of the Western Sahara, the Sahari people, to a process that has no standing in law or in politics, all South Africans should obviously frown on that conduct. This is a reckless individual that have not spared his own country in terms of the political climate and conditions, including the historical political uprising that was brought because of his obviously singular conduct. So I think we should be worried, because if he has went there to transmit a party political position, why does he then think they must utilize the South African flag to validate, to provide legitimacy for his presence in the Kingdom of Morocco? Why couldn't he, if he was there on behalf of his political party, use his political party flag to do that? So clearly, you have here someone that would abuse, South African statehood and misrepresent South African interests to advance his very narrow, personal, selfish, ethno-national interest. And like I've said, it is obviously, if you look back in history, many questions in the corridors of government will be asked that how a former head of state could instantaneously engage on a sovereign matter in terms of sovereign integrity, territorial integrity, and a fundamental aspect of the AU's constitutive act in terms of self-determination, without flinching an eye. So I think we should be concerned, but what we have encouraged as the government is there is no limitation in terms of non-state actors to engage, their counterparts. But they must do it in a responsible manner to advance the South African national interest. What is that? In terms of African politics, is to ensure Pan-Africanism gets affirmed, to make sure the decolonial process are completed, to make sure there's a self-determination of the people of Western Sahara, and that the AU pathway to the conclusion of this particular process of the self-determination of the Sahara people is actually through a referendum underpinned by, concomitant UN resolution. So that should be the pathway where, as a South African political leader, you advise, the Kingdom of Morocco in terms of their obligations as it relates to upholding Pan-Africanism. That is the key issue.
Okay. I want to come back to you and to say that, in fact, what government intends to do about this, in as far as engaging the government of Morocco, because I would have, I would imagine they are the ones who took a decision to put the South African flag there and elevate, Mr. Zuma's visit almost to that of a state visit. That would have been a decision taken on their side, and of course, there's expediency here on their part because they also they feel like Zuma gives them legitimacy. But I want to come back to that because I think let's see if we have established a connection with Thabiso. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to assume is it for the quality of the connection that you're going to keep your camera off. You're more than welcome.
Yeah, well, I can't switch on the camera. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on.
Okay, not to worry.
You are just coming. Slight correction before we.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Just slight correction before we continue.
Yeah.
I'm not representing Al Jazeera. I am a senior research fellow at Al Jazeera at Africa Asia Dialogues.
Okay.
Which is based in South Africa.
Thank you very much for that important correction. That's the way it appeared here, and I thought perhaps I had missed something in the interim.
It's my previous home.
Yes. But I tell you what, I was actually, before we're going to start with you, because let's work a bit backwards, because I do think it's important that we also give the historical context, and I'd allow you, Thabiso, if you can help us out there, just to establish, because a lot of people, I think, every now and again will hear when opening of parliament comes along, where the ANC have their January 8th statement, you'll hear the reference being made to the Sahara, the Western Sahara and the Sahrawi people and so forth. But just talk to us about the history of Morocco's occupation and the subsequent tension with the broader African community who hold the position that actually Morocco should relinquish control of the Western Sahara or the territories of the Sahrawi people that are currently under Moroccan government control.
Well, there's a split within the African countries on whether Morocco should relinquish or continue administering and providing semi-autonomy to Western Sahara. So there is no African consensus on the position of what South Africa and Algeria, for example, hold regarding the Sahara people. That's the first point. The second point is, notwithstanding, Jacob Zuma went, and I just want to find out what law did he break, and that could be helpful. We have at the moment a number of delegations, whether they're going to the United States or elsewhere. Obviously, there seems to be something amiss within the Department of International Relations Corporation. There is a suspicion, at least for many of us who are sitting observing, that there is a lack of trust of the foreign policy interventions of South Africa in these countries. Jacob Zuma was welcomed by Morocco, and he did what he did. And what we have at the moment is the South African government, of course, complaining about what Jacob Zuma has done. But we still don't know what law he broke, except, of course, for the flag that flanked him with the Moroccan flag as was having that joint press conference with the foreign minister of Morocco. But other than that, I'm still not convinced nor aware of what law did Jacob Zuma break. But the other thing you need to remember is that the normalization of relations between South Africa and Morocco occurred during the tenure of Jacob Zuma as the president of this country. Morocco was one of the first countries that supported the struggle against apartheid. It supported the PAC and the African National Congress. Also, by the way, it supported Algeria, which is now, of course, working together with other countries to continue with the cessation of the autonomy of the Sahara people. So Morocco has played a role, not only for other countries in Africa who were fighting for their liberation, but this country in particular received its assistance in the beginning from Morocco. So you've got 2 points which you have to consider as we discuss this this situation. One is that there is no consensus in Africa. There's a number of countries. In fact, I think there's about 20 to 21 countries, African countries, that support the autonomy of the Western Sahara, and the majority of African countries have taken a different position. Their latest one to do so was Ghana and Kenya. So there is no political consensus in this regard. And I think South Africans need to be given a chance to understand precisely what's going on in Morocco, most of whom, by the way, don't really get it. South Africans are not really that educated to understand and discern these political disagreements that we have with Morocco.
Okay. Let me throw that back at the Deputy Minister, then Alvin Bottas, Deputy Minister of International Relations. Now, Deputy Minister, how is, I'd like to, if you will respond, of course, I'll give you opportunity to respond to Thabiso Fakute, but if you will also explain, maybe answer this for me as well, if I can just add that on top of what Thabiso Fakute says there. How different is what Jacob Zuma has engaged in, different from, say, what Solidariteit and AfriForum have been up to, hopping to the US now and again and so forth, and spreading all that they've been spreading. How is that different, say, from what the position taken here by Jacob Zuma? And then, of course, please feel free to respond to what Thabiso Fakute has raised.
Yeah, look, I think the first issue, maybe I must get in here and say what is our minimum expectations? There was recently a very difficult conflict that arose between India and Pakistan, if you can recall it.
Yeah.
And we have been receiving a multi-party delegation from India, and we are speaking here both members of BJP and which is the current governing party, and also members of Congress. And there was unity of purpose that both political parties in that delegation were unanimous in terms of what is the national consensus and position, in terms of the national interest of the Indian people. And our minimum expectations as government is that when non-state actors engage in lobbying and engaging other non-state actors, it is imperative that the national consensus and imperative becomes their value proposition. For example, you would recall when an NGO like AfriForum and Solidarity, including the Democratic Alliance, went to the America and presented very wrong narratives on white farmer genocide. As a result of that, TT, South Africa there has been a number of executive orders issued against South Africa, not because of not aligned foreign policy considerations, but because of the litany of untruths that has been transmitted. The consequence of that is dire for South Africa. We are speaking about the fact that we are facing a 10% tariff imposition as a member of the BRICS states. We are speaking about that we are facing a 30% tariff imposition, in particular on agricultural products. And we are facing a real possibility of AGOA, which was a unilateral trade incentive, to be removed from South Africa. That will result in thousands of job losses. So that clearly, what AfriForum and the DA did was an antithesis to the national imperative of creating jobs to ensure that we reduce and fight poverty, etc. So what Jacob Zuma did, obviously with the Kingdom of Morocco, is a mirror image of what other political parties have done, where the national consensus position, because you would recall, South Africa has been brought about because of a decolonial process through the anti-apartheid movement. That is a key and critical thing. In fact, the same Morocco has been very pivotal to provide support for the liberation movement. And that's why we have been very consistent with the Kingdom of Morocco, that they must engage with the Polisario in regards to executing the AU and UN positions on Western Sahara. It is absolutely not correct, TT, that the African Union do not hold a particular position. There is the AU Constitutive Act, particular Articles 3 and 4, which speaks about the respect for the territorial and sovereign integrity of member states at the point of independence and the right to self-determination, such as applicable to the plight of the Sahara people. So there's a Constitutive Act. Now, Constitutive Act, it's a different word when you look at it, when we say that if you look at, for example, some people argue in South Africa to bring back the death penalty. That debate, it's in conflict with the Constitution. So you can't say, the majority South Africans have a particular perspective. Therefore, no, it's in conflict with the Constitution. Now, Jacob Zuma's conduct in Morocco was in conflict with the AU's Constitutive Act. So it's an antithesis to the decisions made by the entirety of the 54 member states of the African Union at a particular point in time. So I just thought I must clarify that specific issue for your viewers.
Okay. Are you willing then to concede that I think the question that was posed by Thabiso Faguta was that is there a law that Jacob Zuma has broken or that he is in violation of?
Jacob Zuma,
he might be an irritant.
Jacob Zuma just like the AfriForum has misrepresented the South African value proposition to the rest of Africa. What he did is to pledge ostensibly on behalf of South Africa unequivocal support for the regional autonomy unilateral proposal of the Kingdom of Morocco as it relates to
but Deputy
the
Minister, was he not specific to say that it is an MK party position, where he actually used the words that it is our position, or the MK party's position. I'm trying to find the direct quote, but it feels to me that he had been clear that he's speaking as on behalf of Umkhonto weSizwe party. He says pledging support of the party.
Look, Titi, when we meet with Sinn Féin, which is a political party of Ireland, Sinn Féin would never seek to represent the totality of Irish people. They will come with the Sinn Féin party political flag when there's a press conference. What we are saying is that the consistent habit of misrepresenting South African people must come to an end. We do not take it kindly that when Jacob Zuma goes to Morocco, seemingly to transmit a party political position, then out of convenience, there is no party political flag, and he abused the South African flag. Because you would recall, Titi, the flag represents the totality of the South African, the total sum of our struggles. To go to the Kingdom of Morocco, which has not granted self-determination and that continues to occupy territory which is that of the Sahara people, it is obviously not in good spirit. And I think that is what we say. It may not be, Titi, that he has broken any law. But once he engaged in conduct of misrepresentation, we cannot remain quiet as South Africa, and we must call a spade a spade.
So, yeah, I'm just thinking here that you actually used a very good example that you were to illustrate your point. You were talking about if Sinn Féin was to come out to South Africa, they would be, and they hosted a media briefing. It would be under the flag of the party. I also imagine that Sinn Féin would not be visiting South Africa as a guest of the government of the Republic of South Africa, since they're not a government. The government hosts state actors. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yes, Titi. Look, I think our primary responsibility is, as a state, is state-to-state relations.
Yes.
We do that obviously through your structured bilateral mechanism. But we obviously understand that during the work of diplomacy, we do engage non-state actors in relation to, in particular, our foreign policy imperatives. But if we do so, it will never be where we are part of a misrepresentation. Now, you know what political fraud is. Political fraud can be defined as actual or perceived intended misrepresentation. That is what political fraud are politically defined of. And I am making a submission that the perceived and intended misrepresentation by invoking the South African flag as opposed to the party political flag has done the South African brand damage as it relates to the conduct of Jacob Zuma is concerned.
Will you be taking this up with the Moroccan government?
Yes, Titi. I think you would know that we are obviously, frowning on this particular conduct. And it leaves a bitter aftertaste because South Africa has never had the state in South Africa that conduct itself, in a manner in which the conduct of the kingdom has been in this instance. And we will be engaging through the march, the head of mission of the Kingdom of Morocco in South Africa to obviously convey our displeasure in relation to them as a host of their private guests that seek obviously to tarnish and to misrepresent the value proposition of South Africa in terms of the decolonial struggle.
All right. Thabiso Faguta, I know that you would want to come back in here, but if I'm going to ask you to just hold on to that thought, because we need to take a break. This is the Power Perspective. We are talking about the recent announcement made by the former president of the Republic, who is now president or leader of Umkhonto Wesizwe Party, Jacob Zuma, on a visit to Western Sahara, pledged the support of Umkhonto Wesizwe Party for the government of Morocco or the Kingdom of Morocco and their control over Western Sahara. My guests are the Deputy Minister of International Relations, Mr. Alvin Bottas, and senior researcher and director at the Afro-Asia Dialogues, that is Thabiso Faguta. We will carry on with our conversation and we'll take your calls on 0861 987 000. Otherwise, your comments on X at Thabiso Tema or at Power FM 987. Use the hashtag Power Perspective.
Monday to Thursday, 8 p.m. to midnight. This is Power Perspective with TT.
All right, back with our guests, Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Bottas, and also joining us is a senior researcher, senior research fellow and director at Africa-Asia Dialogues, Thabiso Faguta. Thabiso Faguta, let me give you an opportunity before we go to the lines as well to, if you want to pick up on what the Deputy Minister had to say.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not quite sure what irreparable damage that Jacob Zuma has done. As I've said, this is a very academic topic within international relations, and certainly South Africans are not really aware of the bone of contention between ourselves and Morocco. And this thing has just been amplified for no reason. I really do believe that if we do some rapprochement in terms of improving our relations with Morocco, you are likely to have benefit and employment opportunities, including economic growth in this country, because Morocco has got a lot to offer, and they have in the past, of course, signaled interest to do business with South Africa. We know, for example, that companies such as Sanlam, which is one of the biggest companies in this country, is present in Morocco and is doing business. Other companies, including the holding company and subsidiaries of We Buy Cars, for example, are moving into Morocco. So there is that potential business. But importantly, people-to-people's relations are important. And the other thing to mention, notwithstanding the tension that's been amplified, South Africa and Morocco enjoy full diplomatic relations. And what Jacob Zuma did, still, I'm yet to understand what he did wrong. How did he break the law, except for having flanked by a flag, which, by the way, we don't even know who brought that flag, whether it was the Moroccans or the South Africans in Morocco who broke the flag. The other thing which I think is, the other factor which I think is very important, what is our national interest in South Africa? I mean, South Africa has got priorities in terms of its foreign relations, including, of course, human rights and economic growth and seeing the African continent prospering. But one of the things that Mandela left us with as a legacy was the ability to reconcile foes and to try and have a better world, particularly in Africa, in terms of conflict resolution. Whether it was Rwanda, in fact, South Africans went to an extent of before the intensification of aggression and oppression of the Palestinians and the continuing genocide that you see in Palestine, South Africans were in the forefront of trying to reconcile the Palestinians and the Israelis. I'm just not quite sure why that prioritization takes a backseat when it comes to South Africa and Morocco. I think it's something right to do, particularly given the fact that there is no consensus in terms of the position of South Africa towards Morocco and that of Polisario and the Western Sahara. There is a sizable number of African countries who like to see this resolved, but importantly, who have now since turned into supporting Morocco's position in terms of its continual control with certain limited autonomy in Western Sahara. So South Africa, I think South African foreign policy is a bit archaic in this regard, and it prioritizes other things instead of reconciliation, which is also one of our national interests, at least when it comes to countries in Africa. But importantly, I think there is an opportunity here of a rapprochement between ourselves and Morocco. And I think this Zuma Morocco visit saga is presenting an opportunity, and South Africa should grab that opportunity of not necessarily digging its heels in terms of continuing to protect a position. But let us see what we can do. Finally, I think we might just be left with the hot potato. We must remember how far we are from North Africa. And I always have this thought: what if all countries decide to take a position pro Morocco regarding Western Sahara? And what if Algeria, who is the neighbor of Morocco, decides to somehow begin to negotiate some rapprochement with Morocco? Where is South African position going to be if the majority of the countries in Africa, including Algeria, decides to have a certain position regarding Western Sahara? So we have to be very careful moving forward. But I think there are opportunities that are presenting themselves, and we must grab them with both hands.
Let me ask you this, Minister Kabero. I see your call. I'm going to come to you, and other calls coming through on 0861987000. Can I maybe perhaps just based on what Thabiso has just said, maybe you should just explain to us what the official government position is with regards to Morocco. Morocco was readmitted into the AU. I can't remember how many years ago this was now. We do have diplomatic... Say that again, 2017. Is that correct? Yes. 2017. Thank you for that. So they are part of the African family of nations. From a South African point of view, we do enjoy bilateral relations with them, trade and full diplomatic relations. So is this really, would we even be having this conversation, I wonder, if it were any other politician and not as somebody who also happened to be a former head of state? Is it not maybe a case of this offending ANC sensibilities rather than South African government sensibilities?
No, I think, look, Thabiso, let's obviously be clear that we do not subscribe to checkbook diplomacy. That is an important issue. What that mean is that we do not compromise our constitutional values because of trade deals that must be made. We understand the imperative of creating jobs, growing the economy, but not at the expense of our constitutional dispensation. You would appreciate that the South Africa that we have today is precisely because of the OAU that provided maximum unity in terms of our cries and prayers towards self-determination. And self-determination, TT, was granted to us through the one, there was a twofold process. There was a referendum, and two, there was the actual democratic elections. And the formal position of the African Union, the formal position of the United Nations Security Council, which is your key arbiter in terms of moderating on conflicts have taken a decision through the UNSC Resolution 658 and Resolution 690, which advocated for the self-determination of the Sahara people. So what must happen, Thabiso, is that the work of the UN Secretary General Personal Envoy, Stefanos Dimitrios, must be supported because his engagement between the Morocco and the Polisario is ordinarily meant to provide a clear pathway towards one, reconciliation, and two, actual self-determination. Now, what I think we need to appreciate is that not South Africa, not Jacob Zuma can speak on behalf of the Sahara people. The Sahara people quest for self-determination is underpinned through concomitant AU constitutive decisions. It's underpinned by, like I've said, multiple UNSC resolutions. What we must engage on is not a justification of an autonomous proposal from Morocco, which is unilateral, without consultation of the Sahara people. What we must argue for is that any non-state actor and individual that do communicate with Morocco must transmit the positions on Pan-Africanism, which is to allow self-determination. Remember, self-determination, Thabiso, just means the people, the Sahara people, will be privileged to a democratic process. It does not imply the route which that democratic outcome ultimately will take. And I think that is the minimum privilege that we are arguing for. Any suggestion that says that South Africa must shred its constitutional personality is a suggestion that should be frowned upon. We know the Constitutional Court have been unequivocal that, Jacob Zuma is an individual that is in conflict through his constitutional persona with the constitutional laws and regulations of South Africa. We should not export, deviant conduct that is the antithesis to what we stand as South Africans. So I thought that is a very important issue. Last issue, TT, what we can't do. You would recall the EU had bilateral relationships, trade relationships with the Kingdom of Morocco. And then the EU Court of Justice, now in 2019, have invalidated the trade relationships of the EU with Morocco in relation to the occupied territories. So the EU Court of Justice of the European Commission have invalidated the trade agreements. And we can't argue that as South Africa, when a international court already have pronounced on conduct that is not reconcilable with the laws, that we must encourage the South African government to engage in sync.
Yeah, I think we are. What's happening is okay. Let me ask. Please jump in, Thabiso.
Can I just come quickly?
Yes, please.
There are two things that are very important. The assumption that Morocco occupied. The word occupation is a bit problematic because it was a clumsy evacuation by the Spanish authorities or those that were controlling governing that part of Morocco, that led to the situation that we find ourselves in. And that responsibility was left to both Morocco and Mauritania. Mauritania has since, of course, relinquished that responsibility, and Morocco continued. So it's not like Morocco went on to occupy a territory that is disputed. And traditionally, of course, arguably people will say whether it belonged to whoever, but it was not an occupation. It was not like we see what's happening at the moment in Palestine and in Gaza in particular. That's the first point. The second point is we have to be careful of the trappings of cessation. In this country, we've got people who want their own autonomous powers and autonomy and self-governance, and that is the Afrikaner community. They've already started in Orania, and they've got ambition of expanding. I'm very concerned about these trappings of secessionism because it opens up all sorts of things. People who want to live by themselves and having their own cultures, languages are always very problematic because that begets racism, that begets national discrimination against the other. I'm very much for multiculturalism and very much for people living amongst themselves. But once we start opening this Pandora's box of encouraging secessionist movement to have their own countries, we might just find ourselves one day, especially with many other formations and groupings in South Africa who have ambitions of such, including some who are now talking about an independent Western Cape. What are we going to do then? What kind of political justification are we going to use to discourage those kind of attempts? So we have to be very, very careful.
You have indeed, actually, Deputy Minister, articulated the virtues of self-determination very well here. I think there'll be people. It might actually serve an agenda that you did not intend, as Thabiso Fakute says.
No, maybe maybe there's a language problem here. The fact of the matter is, Titi, is that the property and the territory under consideration was part of a colonial vestige. So as the South African property and territory has been part of a colonial vestige, so was the territory of the Sahara people. So that is the first issue. So I think any history student through 101 history will understand there was a colonial process in Africa. I think there is a acceptance that Africa has been colonized primarily through the 1884 Berlin Conference that demarcated Africa based on different colonial interests. And as a result of that process, Spain has been the colonizer of territory of the Sahara people. But we also know that due to the consistent engagement of the Pan-Africanism, we have been witness to the decolonial process in Africa. It resulted in 1975 then for Spain to forgo its claim on the occupied territory of the people of Western Sahara. Now, I agree, there has been no rules that has been put in place by the colonizer in relation to what happens with the territory. But remember, Titi, the important decision of the African Union in relation to, and that includes the OAU, in relation to territories at the point of the colonial process will be regarded as territories that will be recognized. What Morocco did in 1975 is they did two things. It annexed the property, the territory of the Sahara people. It annexed it. And secondly, it then forcefully, through military purposes, occupied the territory of the Sahara people. I think what we are calling for as South Africa, in line with the calls made by the UN Security Council. Remember, there is decisions of the United Nations Security Council on this matter, and I would want, Tembis to Ntati Fakuri to look at the UN Security Council resolutions 658 and resolution of the Security Council 690, which clearly advocate for the path towards self-determination. And like I've said, self-determination says, okay, the people of Western Sahara wants to be privileged to have a decision on what must happen to their future. Now, what you normally do, you then do it through a UN-supervised referendum in relation to what needs to happen. You would know in the South Sudan, why South Sudan today is a sovereign country is because of that type of a privilege. So I am saying that what the people of Western Sahara has experienced is a mirror image to the occupation of the Israeli state on Palestine property, on Palestine territory. So it's a mirror image. And if anyone wants to doubt what I'm saying, Titi, I would not hesitate to lead a delegation to the camps of the occupied territory so that I can invite a Power FM, you and your panelists to go and experience what occupation is and what it means, without any unfettered interest. I think time has come for the South African government to directly take people to an occupation. I have been on the East Bank. I was not allowed to enter the West Bank, but I saw the occupation on the West Bank in Palestine. So I think it's important that we don't negate foreign policy and mix foreign policy with policy of expediency, aka checkbook diplomacy.
All right. Thabiso Fagute, your final thoughts then.
Well, Western Sahara is not a mirror image of Gaza and the West Bank, at which I've worked and know it quite well. The people of Western Sahara have got the right to move freely as they wish. They go to Rabat, Casablanca, and other places in Morocco without any hindrance. The other thing is they don't have the F-16s and all the brutality that is impacted on the Palestinians by the genocidal regime of Israel on a daily basis. They don't have a situation where they are not able to access water, energy, and food, as we currently see in Gaza. And they don't have these incursions of the Israeli Defense Forces coming to the West Bank and destroying mosques, schools, and property of the Palestinians. So it's not necessarily the case that it's a mirror image of what Gaza is. What I think is important, and we need to be careful of, is, yes, I do agree that perhaps we should ask the people of the region, including, when I say the region, I mean Morocco and Western Sahara combined, let them say what it is that they want. And I think you might just be surprised that actually most people might prefer to live together and have one country with certain
well, Morocco was supposed to have facilitated such referendum, was it not?
Well, Morocco is, as said, for example, Morocco has conceded to give autonomy to Western Sahara, of course, without the people of Western Sahara having their own army and a flag, etc. But they are willing to give a limited autonomy and authority to the people of Western Sahara. But as I've said earlier on, my greatest worry as a South African is that what happens if there's a rapprochement between Algeria and Morocco? Where are we going to be? Are we going to continue with the solidarity that we continue displaying towards the people of Western Sahara, or we're going to reconsider our position? And this is a real question. You never know what could happen. At the moment, our greatest ally and the country that we support and follow in terms of partnering in the solidarity is Algeria. And you could just find in the next couple of years where both countries engage in some political rapprochement, and South Africa just will be left with a hot potato, not knowing exactly what to do. And this is a real question, and it's possible I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon, but we need to be careful of that. And again, of course, the trapping of secessionists.
I have to thank you both for staying on later than what we had requested. It's been a most fascinating discussion, and thank you for your contributions to it. I think we're all a little bit more educated, Thabiso, to use your words, about what this actually is about. Every time we hear reference made to Western Sahara, now I think we have a much better picture, and I appreciate both of you for your contributions. Deputy Minister Alvin Bortes, thank you so much, and Thabiso, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
The people shall govern. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is a parting shot there from Minister or Deputy Minister of Justice, Alvin Bortes. Ooh, is that appropriate? I suppose it's okay. He says the people shall govern. He didn't say the ANC shall govern.